So why do I make it a point to constantly emphasize the fact that the overlords and shot callers behind black professional race hustlers like Whoopi Goldberg, LeBron James, Hank Rogers, Roland Martin, and Rashad Ritchie are actually white progressive elitists? Even though at the same time I insist that race doesn't actually matter? Well, I'm happy to explain. Here's the fact of the matter. When it comes to the question of what does it take for a black person to be successful in America, black conservatives in particular have been strategically cut out of the conversation for a very long time.
I haven't even finished the sentence. How am I making light of anything?
You started with some bullshit.
Okay.
This is due to the fact that we love this country and the fact that we embrace Western civilization.
Why don't you like using African American?
Because as I trace my roots back in this country, yes, many of the slaves came from Africa, but my heritage is mostly here in the United States, so I prefer the term Black American rather than African American.
Western civilization is not a white construct, regardless of how much the intelligentsia beats that into your head.
In the United States, the culture, the set of legal practices, those categorized as white, are always at the top.
This country is founded on freedom and justice and life and liberty to all. It was never intended for the black body.
This type of rhetoric serves as an otherization tactic. In other words, it makes black people feel other than, as though we don't have a stake in Western civilization, as though we are separate from Western civilization. But this particular talking point is peddled by black race hustlers who claim that black people who embrace the American idea are sellouts, coons, Uncle Toms, and the like.
He was an Uncle Tom. What did you mean by that?
The people I represent have a real issue with an African American not being sensitive to those issues.
Calling him an Uncle Tom, though, that certainly wouldn't be, appropriate if it was coming from somebody who was white.
But I'm black.
These progressives purposefully want black people and other minorities to feel as though we don't belong here and as though we don't own anything here, because when you can keep people in that state of mind, you can rely upon them to reap havoc anytime you're wanting to push some kind of social policy or to elect some candidate.
There is a discrimination against blacks and against women in our present system, since not all blacks will be superior.
Even though this small select group of white Marxian elitists are responsible for birthing and peddling this kind of rhetoric, they are masters at projecting the idea of "we don't want you here" on white middle Americans, white Southerners, white working class people, and in so doing create friction between ordinary white people and ordinary black people.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables. The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic, Islamophobic, you name it.
The key to their success is black people who do not think for themselves. They don't want black people thinking for themselves, because if they do, then they would be in trouble and out of a job. And so my position is, if your winning strategy is to continue to squeeze me out of the conversation by claiming that black conservatives suck up to white people, then I can name the individuals and I can name the organizations who are giving Hank Rogers his ideas, who is giving LeBron James his ideas, who is giving Whoopi Goldberg her ideas. You'll notice that I keep saying ideas. This is because ideas should be judged based on their merits, not based on the skin color of the person who possesses them. And so if you tell me falsely that I'm sucking up to white people, and I can actually give receipts of how you are actually sucking up to white people, and we can get that mess out of the way, now let's have a conversation based on the actual ideas and whether or not those ideas are good for people or bad for people. It takes nothing more than a brief reading of basic history to see that Marxist ideas are bad for people. On the other hand, America, which is pretty much a capitalist country, attracts the most immigrants of any other country in the world.
From this day forward, each of you is a citizen of the United States of America. Right?
Even for the few black conservatives who are trying to please white conservatives, when you listen to how white conservatives talk, most of them just want to mind their own business and do their own thing, take care of their families, conserve their communities, conserve their businesses, conserve what they have going for them. That's not too much to ask. Anybody of any ethnic background should want the same thing. When you listen to, on the other hand, how white progressives who are supposed to care about everybody talk about black people,
they're less likely to have state IDs.
They don't have the knowledge of how it works. They don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed.
We have to be a lot more intentional when it comes to black Americans.
When you see a black person being pulled over, stop, film. It's the only way we're going to start saving these people.
It's always as if we are special needs, Well, what about black unemployment? Oh, they're trying to suppress the black vote. Black people can't get IDs. It is very peculiar how they talk about black people, not as if we're people, but as if we're projects, and that it's up to them to do our thinking for us. It kind of reminds me of when I was in 3rd grade, we had a friend who had Down syndrome. And whenever we would play sports at recess, we would always let him score. We would always modify the game in such a way to accommodate him. We all loved him and treated him as an equal because he was, but it was very obvious to our 3rd grade brains that he had a special condition. And so when it comes to black liberals, I don't understand how you listen to the way that these white liberals talk about you and not get the feeling that they see you as lesser than.
As white folks, our challenge is to constantly be figuring out how to take actions that make it clear that this environment needs to be safer for people of color.
They present themselves to you as your savior, and you're all too willing to take that subordinate role. But what is your deficiency, really? I'm sure you think that you're smart enough. I'm sure that you think that you're able enough. And so what is it? Is it your skin color? Do you really believe that your skin color is a deficiency? Do you really believe that your skin color makes you lesser than or inferior to others? Just some things to consider.